it often interacts a lot with Chosh and Mishpat ideas of, both kinyan, but here also of edut. So I'm not an expert in these things, but maybe we'll work through it together a little bit. And one thing, the two things I want to flag about it is really like what kind of edut we're talking about here. Like, are the edim just saying we saw an event and they're just confirming something that actually happened, or are they part of that actual event, which might be different? And the other thing I want to point out that I didn't put all of this, we're going to do some of this tonight, but I didn't put all of this originally in the source sheet. But one thing that is going to come up in the edut question is when you have a lot of people witnessing an event, and maybe, do they necessarily have to know their edim? And even if they don't know their, even if they, aren't the designated edim, maybe they think they're edim. And the problems that come up with weddings more so than other events, like, there's a robbery happens on the street or something like that, is that anybody know what's the issue that's going to happen with the unforeseen edim at a wedding versus like witnesses on the street, to a crime?
They have to be ksherim?
Well, say again, Ruben?
Is it that they have to be ksherim?
Well, good, but in particular, there's who comes to weddings?
Relatives,
krovim, right? And so that's actually going to be something that's going to interact here a lot too, is, if I went and stole, broke into your house and stole money, Yavni, and people saw me do it, it's unlikely it's my krovim who saw me do it, right? It's more likely that it's just like random people who happen to live in the area. But for weddings, we particularly have a lot of relatives that are there, and that's going to be potentially a problem as well. So I just want to throw all those ideas out there. Good. So with that, any thoughts before we dive in? I'm going to share my screen again, I think. So, okay. We're going to start with some, background text, and then we're going to dive into some Tur Shulchan Aruch and such. So let's see if I do this correctly. Share screen. We're going to make this full screen. Okay. And if people want, I can also share. I'm going to put this in the chat as well. Copy link.
And make it bigger.
Yes, of course. I just went to the eye doctor today and they told me I'm not quite at the point of needing reading glasses, but I'm getting there. And so I get that. I feel old. Okay. With that, let's see. Asher, are you feeling up at the moment to reading or? No. Okay. Ruben, we're going to start with you. If that's it. We're going to start with a Mishnah in Makot, which has isn't particularly about Kiddushin. It's particularly about Edut. And if you could read the bolded part of the Mishnah Zayin in the first parak, and then all of Mishnah Chet, if that's.
All right. So Al pi shnayim edim u'shlosha edim yumat hamet. Im mitkayem ha'edut b'shni, lama parat ha'katuv b'shlosha. Right? So basically the Mishnah is saying, like, it brings in a pasuk that said that with 2 or 3 edim, yumat hamet, someone is going to die, basically, like in front of the Bedin, executed, right? So you need 2 or 3 edim for someone to get executed. So the Mishnah comes up with a question: like, if that's enough to have 2 edim, lama parad ha'katuv b'shlosha? Why did the pasuk need to say 3? Right? It's kind of obvious.
Great, classic problem in Drash here of, right, you only need 2 edim. Why do you need to say 3? So. All right, so now jump to Mishnah. So there's going to be a discussion in this Mishnah of, like in order, for it to be like edim zomim, all 3 of them need to be zomim, and so forth. But now let's look at Mishnah Chet and what it says about that.
So Mishnah Chet says, "Mashneim nimtzei echad mehem karo pasul edutam betela, af shlosha nimtzei echad mehem karo pasul edutam betela." Right, so the same way that in a duo of edim, if you have one of them that's karav or pasul, the whole thing is scrapped. So same thing with a 3 edim, if one of them is not correct, or like if one of them is not kasher, or it happens to be a relative, edutan betela, right? So we might have thought that with 3 edim, right, if one of them is not good, you still have 2. The Mishnah comes in to teach us kind of a chidush in a way, and says that, like, if one of them is not good, the whole thing is not valid.
Yeah. What might have you said? What's the havamina that you might have said if you had 3 edim, one of them is pasul?
So we might have thought that even if one is pasul, you still have 2 edim, right? Which is really valid.
Exactly, right? You could have 2 edim already, and that's fine. So who cares? One's pasul, right? As long as you can get 2, you're fine. And there's like a really interesting thing about Edut as a group, right? That they kind of come together. So
exactly, they're basically seen as a unit as opposed to like different individuals coming together.
exactly. All right, keep going.
So the Mishnah asks a question. So where do we know that even 100 edim? Where do we know that even with 100 witnesses, if one is found to be invalid, then the whole set is invalid. Talmud lomar edim. So the pasuk says edim.
Yeah, what's the drash there? Is that an obvious drash to you? What they're
So I mean, the way I understood it is that the pasuk uses the word edim as like a set, right? It's like one unit as opposed to like edim coming together.
So Yavni, what were you saying?
Is it that there's it says Shnaim Edim or Shlosha Edim, whereas it could have just said Shnaim Edim or Shlosha?
That's my guess. It's Cryotera, right? It's got that extra adim in there. And so the adim is like, so, right. And the other thing is too, right? If you have, this is like a general, if anyone who likes reading Rashi on Torah, right? Anytime you just have a plural, you just assume it's the minimum number. That's two. You don't even, it could be that the shnaim is extra, right? You could have said edim o shlosha, right? Or something like that. So, so yes, that must mean that, even ad infinitum, if 1-8 is pasul, you're in trouble. So great. Thanks, Yavni and Ruben. Keep going.
So where does this rule apply? Meaning that one is found to be like pasul karav, like the whole set of witnesses disqualified. But in the fashat, just in something that's like very chamur, like in the fashat where someone's life is at stake. But in regular cases where we're only talking about money with camera, adut b'shar. So if one is found to be pasul, the adut is still mikayim. So
exactly,
it's still valid, right? So Rabbi Omer, so it brings in like a different. Oh, sorry, you want to say something?
No, keep going. I was just saying, keep going. Yeah.
So Rabbi Omer, it brings in a different. Sorry, I'm losing my English today. It brings in a different idea. So basically, he says no, that this rule applies to both the nefashot and the mamonot. When they told them about it, like they told them, like you better make sure that everything is like kosher.
Well, I think Bisman Shehit True is like they saw the crime, and before the crime happened, they gave him a warning, right? They said to the guy, if you don't, if you commit murder, right? That it's an isur of mavet, right? Isur mita, but that's the general idea. You can't take somebody to, you can't actually try somebody for dina nefashot, at least unless you warn them. And what he's saying here is, when does this apply? Only if X number of Adim warned him, right? Aval, right?
Aval bisman shelo yitchu b'hem, in a case where they didn't warn them. What's going to happen if two brothers witness someone killing someone else? Is it going to be valid because you're proven?
Yeah, therefore it's only the ones who gave him a warning, right? So that's only Dina Nefashot we're talking about. We're not talking about like Dida, like the Edut of Kiddushin necessarily, or Gitin and so forth, where you don't warn the person, right? But this is an idea to try, and you see the nervousness there already of like, well, if like 100 people witness a crime, and one of them is, I don't know, a gambler, or even like, to go to extreme, eats while walking in the shuk, that person is pasul edut, and then what? There's no crime, right? You can't try it ever. So like, no, they have to be the people who actually warn the person. Okay, and that's the.
But if they didn't warn, then we can pasul. Then if one of them is pasul, then we can just take the kosher ones.
Exactly. Yes. So
that would apply. Wouldn't that apply across the board? Also to dinei mamonot?
Yeah, it could. It could. In
other words, in dinei mamonot, you don't need to warn, so you never would have this problem.
Exactly. That's quite possible. You can extend it that way as well. We're going to see that the Gemara, I didn't bring this, but the Gemara brings a whole question of, it tries to differentiate between that when they come to the Beit Din says, did you come just to view what was going on, or did you come to actually be a witness, right? In other words, what were you there for in the first place? And to try and the state of mind of the person. Thank you. It's a great bridge here. The state of mind of the person is going to make a huge difference here. So in fact, the way the Gemara says is, they asked him, "Lemechse atitun," did you come to see, or asahude atitun, or did you come to be a witness? Okay, and that's going to lead us. Sorry, Yavni, you look like you have a question.
Yeah, I'm not quite following the Zman Sheitru Bahen. So that's just saying that it's only an issue if all of these witnesses were the ones who warned, and one of them is pasul, then the whole thing is pasul. That's the
Yeah, exactly. So if two good kosher witnesses, though, say to a person, don't before you kill this guy, don't you know that if you kill him, you get a mita and so forth, then you're fine, even if 100 other people saw it.
But
right?
wait, but shouldn't you? Let's ask the question: why? Why does it matter?
Yeah.
I mean, the way I understood it is because by warning the person, they're basically stating that they want to act as Eidim in case something happens.
So then there's a
Yeah.
general principle. So then we can get a general principle. I don't know if this is where you're going, Joel.
It is.
Then there's
Yeah,
a general,
it is.
yeah. Then it comes out that there's a general principle that whenever they are announcing that they're witnesses, we sort of grouping themselves as witnesses, then that becomes the group. But if everything is left unsaid, then we can pick and choose we can cherry pick the witnesses as we want.
It's quite possibly the case, right? One of the things, the fears is going to show up here is, what if somebody thinks they were an aide, even if they weren't designated as it, which is going to be one of those cases as well. And you can imagine, right? I mean, I don't want to say it's like a great crime novel of like the guy who goes around committing crimes in a world that has like batei din, and that's where all the justice happens. And he has like an accomplice who's like pasul dude, who's part of the hatara every time, just to throw it off. So. Asher, go for it.
Yeah, would this fall into the category of the ongoing list of how Chazal made it basically impossible to ever enact the death penalty?
I'm not an expert in the whole system of like when you have to warn people, and like what that means from a legal perspective. So I don't want to speculate right now. Let's put it that way. I will, unless somebody else is an expert in these kind of things or knows much more than I do, which might be a lot of people. So it's a good question.
Just a quick question. Just to make sure that I understand. So there's two categories of Eidim in a way, right? So there's the ones that come together as like a group by warning someone together, and then there is like the autonomous aid that are like happens to be at the same place at the same time, right? So
Exactly.
the ones that don't make it clear that they want to be a group, we don't care whether there's one of them that's Karov or Pasul, so long as there's two others that witness the same thing, like it's all good.
No, if they want to be a group, then we do care, right? If they want to
I'm
be
saying like if they're not a group, right? If they haven't warned the person together. So if they're not a group, if one of them is Karov or Pasul, no one cares, so long as we have two people that actually witness the thing. Right. But
exactly. If they're just happenstance bystanders, it seems like that's not what we're talking about here. It's two people. I mean, it could be happenstance, but the two people who are happenstance and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm seeing a crime getting committed. I'm going to go get myself involved in it as an aide," right? Versus people who are just like, walking around, they see something and they don't pay attention to it, or so forth, or barely pay it. They may see it, they may actually have good knowledge of it, but they don't count as a good person for testimony in an actual court case. So.
And wait, can I just ask this rhetorical question at the end, the scenario they're imagining is that two kosher edim, or like some group of kosher edim warned, who are kosher as a group, warned someone not to do this, not to murder, and it happened that there were also two brothers who saw it, and they're saying, "What, are you going to throw it out just because there happened to also be two brothers?" That's the statement.
Exactly. Yeah. So. That's the logical extreme of where this could go, potentially. So,
whereas they are still going to throw it out if those two brothers were in the group that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
But I'm a bit confused. Two brothers are allowed to witness together. They're not allowed to witness on each other, but like together, it shouldn't be.
No. The two Eidim can't themselves be krovim to each other either.
Oh,
right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Yeah. My understanding, right, is right that when two people have a close relationship like that, they're more likely to be zomamim or to like rely on the other's testimony. It's not as it's not as reliable a testimony in that case. You want two people with like real separate minds, shall we say, no separate agendas. Okay, good. So that's all that I wanted to since I wanted to jump us into Kiddushin really quickly. I didn't bring, I'm just going to warn you, I didn't initially give you guys the source, but I discovered it this morning. So I apologize. So Yavni, are you up to reading something you haven't seen before, or
I could try.
Yeah, go for it. All right. So I remind you, he's talking about, this is the Gemara talks about what they do is they ask the witnesses, did you come to just as a bystander, or did you come to actually be a witness? What were you there for? So So that's lemechse atitun or la ashad la as. I'll get the vowels right at some point. Lashude atitun. So or ashode actually, but okay, keep going. Piresh Rashi.
פירש רש"י ז"ל לאסהודי עתיתן בשעת מעשה, וכי אמרי דלאסהודי נתכוונו בשעת ראייה, הבו להו עדים מחמת אותה כוונה בלבד, ואף על פי שלא באו לבית דין להעיד.
Okay.
So Rashi says that when it says you came that they came to witness is at the time of the time of the event occurring, and right, so it only matters that they intended to be witnesses at the moment when they were witnessing, not that they came there for that purpose. Is that that came to the place for that purpose?
Well, no, good. It
Not that they came to the Beit Din.
Beit Din,
The
yeah.
Beit Din.
This is going to be, I'll just give you the background. The machloket between essentially Rashi, the Rashbam, and I think everybody else pretty much is everyone else thinks that this is actually about not who happened to be at the actual Masa. I was tipping my hand here a little bit, but was rather about who shows up at the Beit Din to be a witness, right? In that case, you can have 100 people, but if only 2 of them actually come to the Beit Din, you don't care about the other 98. But Rashi's version is you actually care who was there, not who shows up at Beit Din. So, okay.
And what was going on in their mind when they were there.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
So.
And maybe it's both, though. Maybe it's both.
It's both. Say more, Rav Nachum.
Maybe, in other words, there may have been 10 people over there that were intending to be witnesses. And these 2 intended to be witnesses, but only 2 of them came to the Beit Din.
Mm-hmm.
So we're asking if one of them was puzzled. And in other words, if one of them was puzzled when he came to us and said he intended to be an alien, then we have to throw it out.
Yeah.
But if there was one of them that was puzzled who didn't come, and only 2 kosher ones came,
then we're fine.
Then we're fine because he didn't come. So it's both. It has to also be that they're there in front of us, and also that they intended, which is a little bit different.
At the time.
It's about the same.
Sorry, Lexi, say it again.
Just that it looks like it's about to say the Afal Pishalo Baul Beit Din.
Yeah.
Right?
So no, I think the idea would be in the non-Rashi world for a second here. Let me go to the non-Rashi world is you had to, it's a question of, potentially most people seem to think it's a tension of not what were you doing when you saw the event, but what did you do when you showed up to the Beit Din? Were you there just to be like, in the rows to watch the trial going on, or were you actually there to be a witness, right?
Oh, gotcha. So it's like not Shabbat debating the HaEzer. It's like, what's your purpose for showing it? Fine.
Exactly. So, but it's not so clear. I'll also add it to that. So, all right, Yavni, keep going here.
וכן כתב רשב"ם ז"ל בפרק יש נוכלין גבי ההיא שניים שנכנסו לבקר את החולה דווקא נכנסו לבקר אבל נכנסו להעיד הבו להו עדים ואין כותבים דין.
But this is the idea that people who come to be aidim can't then become the judges in the case, right? If you showed up with the mindset to be an aid, you can't become the dayan. And so this is like a side case in terms of inheritance, but that essentially if you showed up to just to do Bikur Cholim, then you could be the dayan in a case about this person's yorshim. But if you showed up to actually be an aid, then you cannot switch to being a dayan, and therefore it's not the people who came to Beit Din, it's the people who were at the event, is the way the Rashbam is understanding that. So.
שאין עד נעשה דיין מכיוון שנתכוון לראות על דעת להעיד, ואף על פי שלא העיד.
Great.
Right, so that's what you said. וכדאמרינן הכא דאי אמרי לעשהו דעתינן הבו להו עדים ומפסלי כשרים אמתולתיהו?
Yeah, which means because of or therefore, essentially.
ומפסלי כשרים המטלותאי הוא כאילו העידו. So as long as they were there with the purpose of witnessing, and if they're edim psulim, then they can delegitimize the kosher ones who showed up,
Mhm.
as if they bore witness, even if they didn't actually testify.
Exactly. So.
וכל שכן יעתו מאיקרא למחזה, והשתעתו לבית דין להעיד, והעידו. And even more so if they originally came just to observe, and then they came to the Beit Din to testify, and they testified.
Yeah. So this is actually right. This is his culture is going not the way I expected it to go personally, right? Where it's like, even if you just showed up to see it, if you then show up to the Beit Din and say, I saw it and now I want to be a witness, right? That could be posel everything, right? If you were a apostle witness potentially. So, okay, all that, now we're going to keep going.
Okay. זו שיטת רש"י ז"ל ונכדו הרשב"ם ז"ל לפי לשונה. אבל הקשו עליו דמה סברה היא זו לומר כי לפי שמתכוון בשעת ראייה להיות עד, יהיה קרוי עד, שלא להיות דיין ולפסול את הכשרים בכוונתו. אוקיי.
You want help with it, or you got it?
Is it saying like what's the where it's a challenge, that where's the logic that because לפי שמתכוון בשעת ראייה להיות עד, יהיה קרוי עד שלא להיות דיין ולפסול.
Yeah, well, just because you said that, when you saw it, you were thinking about being an ed, that's going to allow you to stop you from being a dayan, but even more so, right? Then you can just like throw out all the other edut, because one apostle aid, had some kavanah there.
Yeah,
that doesn't.
Joel, can you restate that opinion in the context of how it would work at a wedding?
Well, I don't need to. He's going to do it in 1 minute. That's the whole point I'm trying to get to. So yeah, that's great.
Sorry.
Rob Nachum and I clearly planned this out. This is yeah. So jump to the next sentence. Which is really
ועוד אם כן, היינו צריכים לסיים עדים בשעת קידושין, שאם לא כן, ויש שם שום קרוב, אולי נתכוון להיות עד ופוסל את כולם. והווה לי מקדש בעדים פסולין, או מקדש בלא עדים, שאין קידושיו כלום.
Good.
So it's saying like, oh, and if you take this reasoning, then at a wedding, if there's any one relative there, then all of a sudden the whole wedding, the kiddushin didn't happen. I didn't understand why it said v'yesh sham.
If you don't designate, essentially, like set aside these, particular witnesses and say these are the witnesses, right? And to the exclusion of all others. So,
but only if that your Aunt Martha, or not Aunt, well, Aunt maybe is not a good example, but let's say, maybe it is, but let's say your brother, only if your brother had the intention of being the witness, then he could ruin it. But if he didn't have that intention, then he wouldn't ruin it. But we're going to put it into the hands of every person there to ruin the whole wedding.
Yeah. So it's a, good chance that no wedding ever happens now, right? It's if we were going to go to that extreme. So
why does it add O Makadesh below edim in that sentence?
Because maybe there's nobody there,
that intended. Maybe nobody intended.
Exactly. Yeah. So
maybe nobody had the kavanah. If everything is talui on the kavanah, maybe nobody had kavanah.
Yeah.
It's also a bit differently. So like maybe like he cancels out everyone, so therefore there is no edim at all.
I think it also could be, though, it occurred to me that we do, even for weddings where we don't say these are the only witnesses at the exclusion of all others, right, or anything like that, which we're going to see that come up later, or because you see that come up here as well, is I have to imagine that maybe they didn't even call up aiding necessarily, right? They just you did it in front of a crowd, and you just assume that there are people who were watching, but if nobody knew that they needed to have kavanah, then they're out. So.
V'anan behedya kaima. Sorry.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah, that's great.
Did Sarah want to jump in?
Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry,
doesn't it seem like he's trying to set this up as something that would be an obviously ridiculous thing to think?
Oh yeah.
Right.
That's why he says,
Right.
"Aval hikshu alav demasfarahi."
Right. But it doesn't, right? Because otherwise we'd have to do this crazy thing at weddings. But of course, like
We do that.
in Hatinami, we do
Good.
sometimes.
And,
for
well,
other
no,
reasons.
good. He's going to explain that. He's got a Gemara to support him. So this is where he's going to go.
וענן בהדיא קיימלן דבקידושין לא צריך לומר אתם עדיי ולא שנילן בין במקדש ביחידים או ברבים בפני אביה או קרובים. So in the Gemara it says that you don't need to say that, even though we do practice it. The fact that it says that we don't need to. ואף על פי שנהגו בקצת מקומות לסיים.
And I just want to, and there's nobody says there, in the Gemara that it's like, well, maybe that Jew is just, all you do is you do the Kiddushin in front of two people, right, who are good Eidim, and then, later you do Nisuin in front of your family or whatever, but it doesn't say that. It doesn't make that distinction. It's just stam, you don't need to designate Eidim. So, okay.
ואף על פי שנהגו בקצת מקומות לסיים עדים בקידושין לא משורת הדין, התלמוד עושים, לא משורת הדין, התלמוד עושים אלה, אלא לפי שחשו, לפי רש"י ז"ל.
לפירוש רש"י ז"ל.
לפירוש רש"י ז"ל.
Yeah.
ועוד,
so I want to translate that or give it to us, because that's like the
and so he does say like the fact that we do have the practice of designating Eidim is because we were worried about Rashi's opinion here.
Yeah, I don't think it's we there. It's Biksat Mekomot, right?
Okay,
it's
fine.
like the Reed Father's heard of some places that do this, So
This is hugely important. This is like a thing you all have to remember.
Yeah.
Right? You have to remember that why we do this is we're choshesh l'shitat Rashi. It's a huge, hugely important. What?
Sorry, Parashi, shouldn't we have to make an announcement to everyone saying, like, you guys are not Eidim, only those two have to be made, like, are considered Eidim?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
that's
you
an
wouldn't
interesting
know, right?
point. You're right. Yeah, you should really, I think you're right. Logically, according to the way he understands Rashi, put it that way. I'm not sure. I would be interested in understanding Rashi differently, but the way he understands it, it sounds like anybody, the way he explained the Kasha was that as long as there's one person out there who thinks that he's a witness and he's a relative, he's going to ruin everybody. So how is it helping if you just say, these are my witnesses, if that guy didn't hear it?
Yeah, it's so I heard somebody else said something too. I didn't.
It was me. I was like, sorry, my internet was bad, so I think people's sound has been cutting in and out. But I think it might be different here with Kiddushin again. Like when you designate, I think the case of like somebody else intending to be a witness can like fuck everything up, is when there are no Chila witnesses and they're just like, as in there is no like designated witnesses on the party that's being observed or like witnessed about. If, for example, like you don't designate witnesses for a murder, they just happen to be there. Like, I don't know, like, but in a case where like you have specifically designated these people are my witnesses, I think part of the inherent thing is saying like, and specifically these people are my witnesses, right? And so like you in the crowd, great, shkoyach, that you also were thinking about witnessing this event, but that actually doesn't have any like legal significance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of his idea here is the Gemara itself seems to think you don't even need to go that far. But I mean, I will say at weddings, I haven't done very many weddings, but the weddings I've done, I learned the way that, I don't remember who I got this from, but we'll see this actually also show up. It shows up in some later poskim as well, is that you actually call up the Eidim and say, you guys are the, the Eidim to the exclusion of everybody else, right? And but I think Lexi, you're right. I don't think you actually, even just calling up the Eidim, these are the Eidim, I think that you'll see that, like, I think the stam case then is you just can assume that everybody else in the crowd doesn't think they're an aid. They think they're there to take pictures or to misameach hatani makala, right? And not to be aidim.
I mean,
Well, it
yes,
seems
they
like
effectively witnessed the event. You know what I mean? Like, they effectively are there as Eidim, right? So they add to the call, and they do play a part in like making sure that those people are considered married.
It's a great point. And they, and they may think that it's a communal thing. So sorry, Rav Nachum, what were you?
I was just gonna say that the Ritva certainly believes that.
Yes.
Certainly believes that it's enough to say you two are the witnesses, and then we don't have Rashi's problem. It's just I'm not sure that that there's a proof that he's right. I'm not sure that we saw. You could argue, you could certainly say what Lexi said, but we don't. I don't see any rigorous proof that is that in fact
Yeah.
must be.
Well, I think it's a good point too. I think, and we'll maybe see this a little bit later. I think one way or another, if the diavad, right, even if you think you needed to do this, like you need to care about Shitat Rashi and you want to be at Sela Choladeot, right? Then I think if you didn't do it, my own instinct here is it sounds like you've got a pretty strong ritva to rely on that you don't need to have done that. And so.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And the ritva's a big deal. So, okay.
Sorry, one last question. In case where we do have two Adim, that in case like one of the two Adim is actually a puzzle, like is actually like not good, don't we actually rely on the rest of the people to be Adim?
Oh,
Not that I know. It sounds like here, right? Unless they had the kavanah to be aiding, then it wouldn't necessarily work. But I don't know. Maybe somebody else knows this. So.
Because I don't think that we would require a second set of kiddushin in case like, because it happens frequently that like whatever they say that they give their cousin the honor or someone that's kind of mishpacha the honor of being made, and like in a lot of cases like it's not necessarily valid. However, we still believe that the marriage works.
I mean, generally, it's like So sorry, Alana, was that this question that you were asking about? To repeat. Yeah, is it so? Ruben was saying, well, isn't it a case that often happens that there will be a pasul aid because the family doesn't they don't know the halacha and they they designate, they say, oh, we'd love to give the brother a nice role in the wedding, so let's make him an aid. Let's just take that as a case. And so then one is pasul, and then we rely on the fact that there was another aid there. I don't know. I don't know the psak halacha as well.
Well, it could also be that like it's possible that when these cases come up, when that becomes relevant, it would be like after they've also already like married and been living together and whatnot, in which case most people would say even if that like was like only a suffix kiddushin because of XYZ, even if we didn't rely on other people, there are like everything afterwards has like affected kiddushin / nisuin.
Yeah, that's a great point, Lexi. Like it's, in fact, you could probably start stacking stuff, right? You could rely on Rav Huna that maybe the chuppah was,
But you need witnesses for all those things also.
Yeah, but there could have been people who, and then you would have people bring in for Adim that they live together, and
right. We learned this. This is opinion of the Beit Shmuel that you can rely on the neighbors, kind of.
Exactly. But yeah, so there is probably a lot more reliance. It's a great. Maybe
but as far as this sugya goes, if those are the witnesses, then we don't have witnesses, right?
Yeah. The Ritva definitely seems to. That's the other part.
Those are the two witnesses, and one of them is puzzle. Then that's it. We've designated them, and it fits nicely to the Mishnah.
Yeah. So that's for sure. Okay, I think just from a time perspective, we're going to skip the rest of the Ritva. This is the main part I wanted to see from it. He does get into the case of like, the truth is the average person who shows up at the wedding also, like, we don't even need to ask them, right? It's like, you can assume, right, mina stam, that people are there to see the wedding, not there to be witnesses for the average person. So, okay, with that, Alana, I know you wrote that you wanted to read. Do you want to do the Mishnah and the Gemara?
Yeah, sure.
Take it away. So Mishnah Kiddushin, and now we're going to get into the question of like, what if, if you get married with only one good witness, or with only one witness, or and so forth. So go ahead.
Right. I should say I'm trying to make a chart of all this, but I don't think I'm nailing it. So if any of you sitting there at home are also trying to make charts, I'd love to see yours.
So.
Okay. Haomer leisha kiddashtich, v'hi omeret lo kiddashtani. Hu asur bikroteha, v'hi muteret bikrovav. So if a man says to a woman, I did kiddushin on you, and she says, no, you didn't, he is forbidden to her. He can't go marry her sister. He's forbidden to her relatives.
Mm-hmm.
But she is permitted to his relatives. So basically, it seems like it's the kavanah or the intention here that determines whether somebody's available to the relative.
Well, this might also get into like, if you're willing to make the claim yourself, now you've brought it. Well, I'm actually not going to say anything. I'll leave it at that and keep going with it for the moment.
I mean, right. Okay, היא אומרת, קידשתני, והוא אומר, לא קידשתי, הוא מותר בקרובותיה, והיא אסורה בקרוביו. So if now we flip it, she's the one who says, you did Kiddush on me. He says, no, I did not. He is permitted to her relatives, and she is forbidden to his relatives. So it's the same logic, just a flip.
Exactly. So.
The logic though seems very, very strange, because from the beginning, like in an egalitarian world, that makes perfect sense. But the world of the Mishnah was not an egalitarian world. And from the very beginning, we've been talking about how it's on the man, likadesh isha. So if he's mikadesh ota, she has the right to say, no, you didn't. But if he hasn't mikadesh ota, then she can't say, well, yeah, you did.
We're asking them to verify what happened. We're not asking them who did the kiddushin, right? I think is what's going on here. We're saying
no, but she's saying you did kiddush oti, and he's saying no, I didn't.
Yeah.
If he didn't, then.
But why would we? Essentially, we're saying we equally, the person who makes the claim to bring an Easter upon themselves. Good. We're gonna bring the Easter upon them essentially.
Basically, like the inequality in like who can affect the act does not necessarily reflect how we understand the reporting of whether that occurred in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me for being late. Can you hear me? Am I hearable?
Yeah. We can.
I like what Usher said, because they did not succumb to some form of thinking that will say the husband determines it, the Baal determines it so completely. And you all have so bought in to that logic of the rabbis that they don't do such a thing. Might want them to do other things, right? You may say they're not as egalitarian as you want to be, but nonetheless, you have bought into the thing is the rabbis are not unfair. So that's a good thing. So Asher, I'm with you up to a point.
Rav Lennis, it's actually, and you're making me think about it. The Rambam, which we saw this many classes ago, right? The Rambam starts out Hilchot Ishut with this whole idea of before the time of Torah, right? Essentially, like a man would just like take a woman to his house. He could claim he was married to her. There was no edim, there was no proof, and it was kind of like just his word alone. And this, in some ways, is the anti that, right? It is the sense of no. It's not only do we need edim, but we don't just rely on his word alone, except to tell him that he's now off limits to her relatives, right?
Well, the Rambam does emphasize Ratzahu Vahid, and when he talks about that in all the times, which I always found actually to be interestingly egalitarian, that it's like if they both wanted to, then they would have sex and they would whatever, or if they both wanted to, they would do prostitution and it was a great time. But he does say that for each of the paragraphs.
Yeah, that's in the before Matan Torah, or in the after?
in the before period is like if they both wanted to, this is what happened.
Interesting, but it was between just the two of them themselves, right? Beno Vena, right?
Yeah, he says like he doesn't say anything about edim, but he does like interestingly emphasize that it's like something that if they both wanted to, XYZ happened.
Interesting, yeah. So, well, good. All right, with that, I mean, not good, but good, so Alana, let's jump into the Bavli in Kiddushin on this piece.
Okay. All right. I mean, to me, it's just like you can't have it both ways. You can't say that you're engaged to somebody and then also want to engage one of their relatives. But
exactly, it's
It seems like I don't even feel like we need Adut for that. It just seems reasonable to me. Okay. Amar Rav Yehuda, Hamekadesh be'ed echad, ein chosheshin likdushav, ve'om mineh me'Rav Yehuda, shnehem modim. Ma'in.
Shnei modim mai, right? Is the question that they're going to ask.
Thank you.
Go back and just explain the initial Rav Yehuda and then what they asked.
Okay. So Rav Yehuda says, somebody who does Kiddushin with one witness, they don't have to worry about whether Kiddushin has happened.
Exactly.
You got to clarify. What do you mean they don't have to worry?
Yeah, good. Okay, good.
Did it or did not happen?
Right. So I welcome all of you to clarify. Why does he not? Why not? I don't know.
Good.
I guess
So
we're
usually,
based on the Mishnah that.
oh, good. The Mishnah is going to cause us trouble. You're on that well, right? But ein chosheshim l'kiddushin means there was no kiddushin. There's not even a safek kiddushin. There's no need for a get l'chumra. Nothing happened essentially. They might as well.
The not choshesh about it means you don't have to worry about it because it definitely didn't happen.
Exactly. They might have well been, it might have been a play for all, like essentially. Well, play could be a problem too, but let's pretend for the moment. It's
okay, right.
Yeah.
So this is
Sorry,
where
sorry to interrupt. The way I understood it is that it's not that it didn't happen, it's just not chal. Like whether it happened or not, it's not just not relevant. It's not chal whatsoever because there is no
Great.
edim.
Yeah, I have to be very careful about language here. It's a whole question of like because there's no second aid to testify, or is it because the event might as well have never happened? It's like there's actually so I will leave that open, Ruben, and I think it's a great. Can I repeat your comment for a second? It's
Sure. Can you guys hear me properly? Because I've been having trouble with those headphones.
I can hear you fine.
Okay,
so,
perfect.
Yeah, it's we're close though. You could just be I can hear from Windsor. It's but yeah, right. The idea is like. We're not chosheshin because it's as if the kiddushin never happened. It doesn't matter. Or is it because there's no second aid, and so it could have happened, but there's no second aid to testify, and therefore we can never verify it in court, right? That's what you're saying?
I think we're saying it's that the Gemara so far it looks like standard Adim law, so that's what we're going with.
Okay, and I think so too. So we'll go with that for the moment. All right,
Okay,
so now they ask.
We don't worry about it. So Be'ol Mine me Rabbi Huda. So they go before Rabbi Huda.
Sorry, just Ba'umine. They ask of Rabbi Huda. So you can imagine it as Midrash. So
okay. So they ask of Rabbi Huda. Okay. Presumably somebody else is asking of Rabbi Huda. But okay. Shnehem Modim Mai. So I think it's if both the man and the woman in this kiddushin acknowledge that it was a kiddushin, then what's the answer?
Exactly. There's one aid, or maybe no aidim, right? But probably one aid. And the man and the woman say, we got married. Here was our one witness. Now what's the case? So.
Right. Okay. So I feel like my confusion was appropriate. Mm-hmm. So in Vela, this is crazy. Yes and no. Verafia bide. I think that means he didn't know, or his knowledge was uncertain. Something like that.
Yeah, literally, it was weak in his hands. Right, he had a weak grip on it. Okay. But in other words, he says he equivocates. I think is the best way to put it.
Yes and no. It depends.
Yeah, he's not. I think it's more that he's not sure. Right, he's just kind of yeah.
Okay, so far, I'm with him. So, Itmar, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, Hamkadesh ve'ed echad, en chosheshin l'kedushav, ve'afilu shnehem modim, etive, Rabba.
Afilu shnehem modim.
Okay, modim, thank you. Ve'afilu shnehem modim. Okay, so he's saying, the Rav Nachman says that Shmuel says the one who does kiddushin with one witness, he doesn't have to worry whether it's kiddushin, and that even if both parties are modim on it, that's still the law. So he's quoting that opinion. I think in that case there was a kiddushin.
No, well, no, right? We don't know chashash for kiddushin. Even if the two of them, even if the man and the woman come and they say
the man and the woman say there was kiddushin, the answer is definitely not, and we don't even worry about it because there's only one aid.
Exactly. So
okay, got it. Keep going.
Yeah.
So ATD Rava. So Rava has a challenge. Mm-hmm. Rav Nachman. Okay. HaOmer leisha. Now we're back to our Mishnah. HaOmer leisha kidashtich v'hi omeret lo kidashtani. Okay, so this is exactly our Mishnah. The man says to the woman, I did kiddushin on you. She says, no, you didn't. He's forbidden to her relatives. But he muteret bikrovav, and she is permitted to his relatives. Okay. Idi ika edim, amai muteret bikrovav. So I think it's if there's witnesses, why is she permitted to his relatives?
Exactly.
Okay, which is a good question. Good question. And if you're saying that there's no witnesses, and if the opposite, if there's no witnesses, why is he forbidden to her relatives? It should be consistent.
Exactly.
So this was just referring, he's saying the Mishnah refers to a case where there's only one witness.
Mm-hmm.
That's Rabba's opinion.
That's what he's presenting here, at least as a way to read the Mishnah for the moment.
Seems like a good solution, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Which sounds like then, right, having one witness, it's literally what Rav Yehuda kind of was in villa, right? It's like yes or no. If you have one witness to a marriage and one of the parties agrees with the witness that there was a wedding, then that party is like treated as if they were married. And then potentially you can even extend if both of them, then they're both treated as if they're married. And so Eid Echad, it works in B'Kiddushin.
Mhm.
So, however.
Okay.
Sorry, just a quick question. Ilana, sorry for interrupting. So are they saying that the party that's saying I am married becomes an ed, or it's just like a little plus to the existing ed?
It's a great question. I'm there's like different ways I think I could formulate it, but one of it is that, you know, if there's only one aid, then the testimony, I wouldn't call it testimony, then the statement of the, you know, the chatan or the kala combines with that aid to like make the kiddushin a reality, at least for that person, right? It's you literally live in kind of like this quasi reality of like one of you is married to the other, but not vice versa. If you have one aid.
So you basically have the disadvantage, quote unquote, of marriage without really being married. So you're just kind of imposing chumrah onto yourself.
Yes, exactly. So, but good. All right, Alana, finish this up with the Gemara here.
Okay. So Hacha b'maya skinan. What kind of situation do we have here? Kigonda amala kidashtich bifnei ploni ufloni v'halchu lahem medinat hayam limdinat hayam. Okay, so what kind of situation are we dealing with? We're dealing with a case where he says to her, I did kiddushin on you in the presence of, I guess, aid 1 and aid 2, meaning they're 2 aidim, but they went across the sea. So we don't, basically, we did have aidim and we had 2 kosher aidim, but now they're gone, so we can't ask them about it.
Yeah, here's the case where the chatan and kala disagree. We had aidim, but right now, you know, in the meantime, before we can go fish out these aidim from, you know, Siberia or whatever, we need to rule what's the case at the moment. At the moment, he's asur lekrovotea, but she is mutar lekrovav. So
right.
Okay.
So he's permitted. So now the Mishnah makes more sense. He's not allowed to marry her relatives, and she can marry his because there are no witnesses to. He's saying this is a fact and they're witnesses, but we don't know where they are.
Exactly. He's claiming there's witnesses, but we actually can't get a hold of them to find out if they actually were 18 or not at the moment. So it's actually a very complicated case, but I think one of the things that comes out here is the Mishnah, it just read by itself sounds like you don't need edut that it's all about on the chatan and kala. Not that you don't need edut, but the testimony of the chatan and kala about what they did, you know, is really what we're worried about. And the Gemara kind of fixes our thinking on that and says, no, Rav Yehuda does in particular, like edut is really the central point here, right? You need edut to make it happen. So,
right. Whereas the Mishnah makes it sound like it's about their own kavanah and perception, which sounded so, like Gershon said, it sounded so radically ego.
Exactly. So good. I want to stop here for a moment before we're going to do the Tosefta, and then we're going to take a break, I think. But any Rav Landis? Oh, we couldn't hear you, Rav, on this. Sorry.
Well, they need you to be on. Unmute yourself.
He is now.
I'm fine.
Oh, good. I thought you had something to say to us. I'm so sorry.
It's a good stopping place. Okay. Speaking about stopping places. Okay, my car once again went on the fritz. I was in a very dark spot. 4 hours for Shagrir to come, but they came within 3 hours, which was very nice to fix it. And it's a guy who's used to fixing my car. It's the whole buildup. And of couldn't get the car to start. He couldn't get the car to start. He's a big expert. Big mistake to park your car in a dark area and have it drive while you're parked.
Is this the
So that's a good stopping place, and the starting place is I'm going to try to learn from my mistakes. Anyway,
fair enough?
okay.
With that, let's do the Tosefta, and then we'll take a break. So let's see, Sarah, you want to read the Tosefta for us?
Joel, before you go forward, can you just
Yeah, please.
kind of kind of refine the machloket? Like what's the point of contention here? Like what are they arguing about? Like whether you need an 8 or not, like, or what's this, like what exactly is the machloket?
Yeah, so one way, maybe I'm very much already influenced by some other sources, but I think part of it is the edut there just to clarify that the wedding happened, or does the edut make the wedding, right? I think those are two very different ideas, right? It's like if a man gives, does kiddushin with a woman, he gives her kesef, says haret mekudeshli, and there are no edim to see it. Is it an event that actually happened and it's good kiddushin, and the edim are just there in case like they claim that, well, no, they have a dispute. They're machish achadet hasheni, right? They're like, no. One says I did it, one says I didn't, or is it that you actually need the edim to make it happen, right?
Who says you don't need anything to make it happen?
I mean, it's a way I think that that was hold on, I got to go back now to the source. Who was it? It was Rava, right? Rava seems to think at least 8 echad works, right? Is it Rava?
Right.
Yeah. So, which presumably 8 echad means no edim as well, is my guess. So
Maybe not.
Maybe
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Right, like, couldn't it be that it seemed like the logic you were saying before, that the Eid Echad is like, when there's some other mitigating factor, then Eid Echad
8
works.
echad works. So,
But it's not just that nothing would work. There has to be the mitigating factor, and there has to really be Eid Echad, otherwise nothing happened.
But isn't Eid Echad considered like almost as a no ed? Like most places, like Eid Echad doesn't really count. Like
So
especially as you
In
relate
other
to
words,
marriage.
Eid Echad Ne'aman B'Isurim. And so
Yeah.
this is an Isur, so we're just trying to verify if it happened. Like we need Eid Echad to tell you if a chicken is kosher.
It's kosher.
So-
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
And so maybe,
Oh.
and that's what you're saying, that you need one witness to just clarify that the event happened, but not to create the event.
Exactly. So
The witness
Is
needs to
that-
tell us that
or
there
it-
were two witnesses there.
What?
or
The one witness needs
or to
to-
tell us
is
that
there
two
to
wit-
te- needs
yeah,
to tell
oh,
us that there were two
yeah.
witnesses.
I'm gonna bracket that from. I hope we might get into that. The whole question of like, what if there's one aide who claims there were two aidim there, and it's like a whole.
Well,
like,
no, that's fine. That's fine. That's exactly what the Gemara is saying at the end.
yeah.
We have
So-
the Chatan. That's the conclusion of this Gemara. That the Chatan says, or one of the two men or women says that there were two witnesses, that everything was a kosher wedding, and the other says there were not two witnesses. So we have two witnesses that are machishim echad et hasheni, that are contradicting each other. So we can't resolve that. So each one is trusted to believe himself.
Exactly.
But that's only where where the one who claims there was a wedding says there were two witnesses there. So it sort of seems like you do need two witnesses. I mean,
Yeah, at the end,
and that
that's-
they are right.
That's the
With all due
maskana
respect to
of-
Rava.
Yeah.
But that's the machloket, right? So one said that like 1 aid is sufficient and that it's sufficient to create some kind of a doubt, and the other one said no, has to be 2 ed, but like someone has to like.
No, I'm not sure. I think
was,
I can't tell if is it still Rava is talking by the end of the sugya, or is that the Gemara coming to explain Rava according to how the Stama wants it to be read? Like it's hard to tell, but it seems like they're coming to say that the Rava opinion is about the witnesses as they function to testify, not the witnesses as they function to, which means that in order to actually do the wedding, you would still say by Rava that you need
I
two
don't
witnesses.
think that Rava's statement is actually an opinion. He's just bringing a kasha from our Mishnah, and then we resolve the kasha with a good explanation. And now there's no machloket. There's nobody left saying.
No, I mean I understood that it was Rav Nachman answering Rava. That's how I understood it.
Well, yes.
It brings like a machlok. It brings a kasha, which is really valid. So that's his opinion. based on the Mishnah. And then Rav Nachman comes along and just answers that like, no, the Mishnah talks about a specific case where really we had Edom, but then they traveled overseas. I mean, that's the way I understood the Gemara, but I could be totally wrong.
No,
Yeah, but I'm
you
just
know,
saying that Rava is, I don't think he's a conclusive statement. He's bringing a kasha. He's saying, how are you going to explain this Mishnah? And then he explains it. So Rava says, oh, I mean, we don't know. Maybe Rava says, oh, okay, that's, we don't know that Rava came up with a state. We don't have an actual, independent statement saying one witness is sufficient.
yes, but I'm gonna say, like, in
Must
terms
we
of
do?
Ruben's reading, we're gonna later see that there is an opinion that there is a chashash for kiddushin with Eid Echad, and I think that relies on the idea that it's the Gemara answering Rava, and maybe it's just an answer, and Rava's statement actually holds some water at the end of the day. His question, you're right, it's not a statement of Rava, it's a challenge of Rava's, enough that we're chashash for it, and so I think that's actually an interesting
Right.
read. So,
Well, okay. I'm giving you my reading. The way I would read the Gemara is that that's not a definitive statement of Rava. But what about Rav Nachman? What about Rav Nachman? What's his opinion?
we don't know. We never get. I know Rav Nachman said he's the one who says, right, that he has a statement from Shmuel that if you're mekadesh be'ed echad, there's no chashash at all, right? Even if the bride and groom agree that there was kiddushin. So,
Or actually, I meant Rav Yehuda. Right? Ein choshesh.
So yeah, it's a question. Do we read Rav Yehuda as, well, yes and no, it could be, or does Rav Yehuda of like, well, yes, well, no, I'm not really sure, right? Rav Yabiyadeh sounds like he doesn't know the answer to this question.
Or he doesn't want to be posted, right? Doesn't know whether to go after Rava or Rav Nachman.
Also true. So it's so it's not clear.
Okay.
It's all right. With that, maybe this is a good time to take a break, and we're going to come back. We'll go right to the Torah and Shulchan Aruch. So
We'll leave your screen open if you want to, for those who want to read the Tosefta.
I'll leave my screen open for the moment. It's the Tosefta is worth it. The Tosefta, the main thing about the Tosefta, I'll just summarize it, is that you, if the Eidim didn't see it at the same time, they each saw part, at different times, then they can't be mitzarfim to be for Edut in that case. So, okay, Tov. I will see everybody in 5 minutes. I'll stay on.
Okay. Joel, I think I need to say goodnight. I'm fighting to keep my eyes open.
Refuah Shlema, Asher.
Thanks very much. Like I said, that I'm thanking Hashem that this is the most serious of the symptoms I have, but I'm not gonna keep tempting fate. So
Good. Yes, and I hope that it only gets better, not worse from here. So.
Amen. All right, Laila Tov, everyone.
Laila Tov.
Refuah Shlema.
For the-
Ruben.
Yeah, Rav Landis, I actually sent you an
Okay,
email.
it's fine. What do you have tomorrow? Israel time, Ruben. I can go from my morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
So I'm good
And then
anytime
again in
before
the
6
evening.
Israel time.
Israel time, because I didn't figure out your time. 8 p.m. Israel time to finishing by 11. So do you have anything in that?
Yeah, I'm available anytime before I think 7 p.m. Israel time. So like
So 7 p.m. would be good for you?
7 p.m. would be 1 p.m. by my time, right?
Now what's your, I'm getting confused.
I'll
You're
say, let me just-
available, you want to do, I can't do until, no, see, that's when's your end time tomorrow night?
let's see. Let's see if I do 10 a.m. Canada time to Israel. What about 5 p.m. your time? Would that work?
5 p.m. No, I really can't do from 3:30 until 7.
Okay, let me figure that out. I'll send you an email.
Okay,
shortly.
find 1 or 2 things and then we'll do it tomorrow. We'll figure something out.
Perfect.
But
I'll send you an
you're
email.
gonna
shortly.
write me.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna figure it out within the next couple minutes and then just send you an email.
Okay.
I'm truly sorry, like it didn't show up on my calendar.
It's fine. Okay, it's fine.
Perfect.
Seriously.
Rav Landis, is
who's
this
there?
the car your family's been trying to get you to get rid of?
I know, they thought this was another big success, but now given if it's based on in you know, a system failure, then once again they really should be getting rid of me. But it was like when I called Cheryl to say I'm stuck and all that. We have a parallel problem with her computer, which has also been ghost-faced and also Techias Mesim, and it also died today. So we got the whole family praying that it's not, there is no Techias Mesim on the computer.
No, I needed to have a day of life so I can print what I just wrote.
And then these two things happened at the same time. At the same time, the lawyer we had to hire, because the IRS is so, there's a lot of problems in the IRS these days. The IRS told us we owe money, then they told us we didn't owe the money, but they want the money. They told us that they want any of that. He also called at the same time. So we had a complete, at one point we had complete breakdowns.
And this is only Purim Katan, right? It's
Oh man. Oh man.
Wait, so you turned the
I don't
car,
joke about that. You can joke about that. I don't joke about that. You know,
you turned
Fair
the
enough.
car off when it was in drive, and then it wouldn't
car's
start?
totally fine. It's the drive, as the guy from Chagrir's, the towing company, said, it's the driver, it's not the car.
So what did he do? Just put it. He just moved it into park.
Tell what Robert said.
You need to get a manual transmission. Then it'd be easier.
Right.
Yeah, right, right. Very embarrassing. We're, okay. What's our next piece we're doing now?
we're gonna do the tour Shulchan Aruch next. So.
Okay. It's embarrassing. What's the Siman again?
No, it's Membet.
Excuse me?
Membet.
Membet.
Rav Lundy's quick question. Could you do 3 p.m.?
What time?
3 p.m.
My time? Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Send
I'll send
me,
you an invite.
send me an invite.
Cool. I'll send it to you. Shkach. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We'll bring everybody back here.
I like your kippah, Joel.
Oh, thank you. Which one am I wearing?
You're wearing a red star.
Ah, yes. It's, my daughter likes to play this game where she goes to the kippah drawer. She takes all of them out, and then she'll take the one off my head and hide it from me, and then give me another one, and then she like swaps them out over. And so I end up with random kippots on my head. It's kind of but so.
Presumably, you like all the ones in your drawer.
I do. Well, some of them are like, really tiny ones that don't fit, but it's and a lot of them are from our wedding, the ones we gave out.
I'm actually annoyed with Bennett, because I think Api Halacha, a kippah has to be visible from all sides. And that's actually one of the dinim of a kippah, that it shouldn't look like you're not wearing kippah.
Yeah,
like you're wearing kippah. And Bennett has this kippah like glued to the upside down back of his head.
I will say I read a lot about how he keeps the kippah on his head, because I'm getting there, and so I need to learn all the techniques of.
The technique is to get a bigger kippah.
I know I'm actually thinking I need to buy some bigger ones. So it's so
That
okay.
should be your biggest complaint about your head of state.
That is my biggest. Well, I don't know much about what he's doing, so I don't have any other complaints.
But it's kippah. All right. Let's come back. We're going to start with the tour. I think just based on time, what we'll do, just to give people, we'll do the tour. There's one Darchei Moshe I'd like to do, which is a little bit lengthy, and then we'll go right to the Shulchan Aruch from there, because I really just want to nail down psak halacha of all of this. So with that, maybe let's see. Lexi, can I have you read both the tour and the Darchei Moshe? Is that fair?
Sure.
Okay, starting with starting with in the Tur Hamakadesh Shelo Be'edim, it's labeled as Bet Dalet in mind for those that label Seifim.
Okay. המקדש שלו בעדים ואפילו בפני עד אחד אינם קידושין ואפילו שניהם מודים בדבר. Right, so if you do kiddushin with only one aid, even if both of you agree that it happened, it's not kiddushin. ובספר המצוות כתב שחוששים לקידושין להצריך הגט. And the Smog says that we do worry in the case, like, and I think everyone says that this is like specifically referring to like bishnehem modin and edechad, then we actually do worry and we require a get.
Exactly.
But if you do it in front of adim, aka plural, even if you didn't explicitly like tell them that you are our adim, then great, it works. It's effective. And the Darchei Moshe you want is the Dalet.
It's earlier, but let's finish the tour and then we'll go back to the Darchei Moshe. So.
Oh, the mine goes into, it says Hamikadesh Psule Edut is hey. No.
Yeah, I want to read. I want to read.
Oh, yes, all the way through. Right.
Yeah.
So Hamikadesh Psule Edut Oraita Enam Kiddushin because of Rambam Aval Psule Edut Derabanan Ube'edim Shem Safek Psule Torah Im Rotze Lichnos Choser Mikadesh Be'edim Shem Im Lo Rotze Lichnos Tzricha Get Misafek Vafilu Im Kapara Isha Vomeret Lo Kiddushtani Kofino Toli Tenget. Okay, so if you do kiddushin with people who are pasal edut d'oraita, then it's just not kiddushin whatsoever. But the Rambam, if you do it with them who are like only d'Rabbanan pasal, or like we're unsure if they are a certain thing that would be pasal d'oraita, then in those cases, either if he wants to be engaged to her, he should go and do it again, and if not, then you need to give a get. And then even if she said contradicted this and said no, never was mikadesh me, we still make him give a get. And the Rambam has a different girsa where it's kofino tali kach get. Yavni actually had a question on that. Did the Rambam, were they following the Takana Rabbeinu Gershom for the not divorcing women against their will?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the Kesef Mishnah just fixed the girsa. So just to remind you, sorry, Lexi, I'll just clarify. So the Rambam's, you said it, but I just want to say it again so people get it. The Rambam's version of this isn't that we force, if she says we were never married, we force him to give a get. Rather, he says we force her to take the get, right? Which is weird because it's talking about Rabbeinu Gershom, right? In Ashkenaz, it says a woman can't be divorced against her will, but in Sfarad, it seems like she could. And so there's a lot of controversy over what the Rambam means there, if that's a good girsa or not. Sarah, do you remember there was another answer besides the changing girsa, wasn't there? That someone had?
Yeah, there was. I don't remember it off the.
Well, couldn't we just say that the gezerah? Can we just simply say the gezerah doesn't apply when it's a suffix?
Also, yeah. Somebody does say that, actually. I remember correctly. They say that there's the gezerah of Rabbeinu Gershom it wasn't there for a case of suffix. But yeah, it's a great point.
That's the standard toolbox of the posek.
Yeah. So, but
a suffix, you're right. The suffix is a very useful thing.
Mm-hmm. So, because
practically speaking, in a suffix, you try to make it a non-suffix.
Right.
So it acts just like it acts mostly like avada in terms of what you should be doing l'chadchila. You never want to create a suffix. So if you can get out of however you can get out of the suffix in a good way. And then it works in case if you have to find some sort of HaEzer, you're only up against a suffix as opposed to being up against avada.
Avada, yeah. So also a great Purim costume is you can be the tool person with the halachic toolbox, with the posek toolbox, and you can come to shul. So I just thought of it. So good. But all right, with that, let's do at least the beginning of the Darchei Moshe in Daled. Starts v'chatav Maharam Padua.
Yeah. V'chatav, is it Padua or Padua? Padua?
I assume it's from Padua, from Italy, right?
If I don't know what that place is, so if you say it's pronounced Padua, I'll take your word for it. The Katav Maharam Padua Siman Lamed Bed B'Shuvatav had אף על פי ששניהם מודים לא הווה קידושין, אם החמין עדים, היינו דווקא דאמרה ששחקה בו. אבל אם אמרה לא היו דברים מעולם, הבו קידושין, ושוב אינו נאמנת לומר ששחקה בו, עד כאן לשונו ואין שם. So he talks about this case of like, when they both agree that something occurred, but the Adim were like hidden such that like they couldn't see the Adim at the time this was happening. It's only not Kiddushin in the case where she's like, oh, but I was joking, like I didn't mean it seriously, because everyone knows that when there aren't Adim, it's not like real Kiddushin. Because then we say that like this idea of part of the role of the Adim is also kind of confirming / affirming like intent of what's going on here. Whereas if she says, oh, that just never happened, then like they are still two Adim who like witnessed this occur. And so even if like when they weren't seen, they're not sufficient to confirm like intent. If she says I was joking, they are sufficient to confirm that like this occurred. And so if she just says he never gave that to me or something, then we just don't believe her and we say actually it was Kiddushin. Presumably also from like the Migo, if she could have just said, oh, I didn't mean it.
Exactly. So
yeah.
Since she could have said, and this is, by the way, I should have given the background, which we'll see later, is not only do there have to be Adim there, but the Baal and the Chatan and Kala need to know that the Adim are there, right? It can't just be that they're secret Adim to Kiddushin, which is the whole thing of their Hichmin. If he hides them or they're hidden, right, that's not good enough in general. But here we see a limitation on that from the Maharam Padua. So. All right, great. And keep going a little bit more in the Darchei Moshe.
Yeah. Katav Mordechai, Perek Omer, B'Shem Re'em, Hichad Ed Echad Min Ha'edim Lo Ra'a Hanetina Mamash, Ein Avatel B'Kach HaKiddushin, De'im Ed Ro'eh Davar Mochiach, Yachol Ha'id Ki'ilu Ra'a Guf HaMaseh. So the Mordechai reported the name of their M that like if there are two Adim and only one of them saw the actual specific act of the giving, then that doesn't like invalidate the Kiddushin, because like the fact that there were two of them there and one of them saw it like really well, essentially like is sufficient to prove the matter, given that there are two people there in general. And we can basically count the other person as if they had seen the thing. אמנם בתשובת הרשב"א כתב דאף על גב דאיכא הרבה אומדנות המוכיחות, אין כאן כלום עד שיראו העדים הנתינה ממש. But the Rashba says in Teshuva that like even if there are a lot of things that would seem to be clear indicators that like of intent and of a thing happening and whatnot, that like actually it doesn't count unless the Adim, presumably here, both of them like saw the actual Natina. וכן הוא בתשובת מהר"ם, בתשובת מימוני, סוף ספר נשים, אמרתי לה מרדכי, סוף המגרש.
Actually, I'm going to stop there. The next part's interesting too, but just in the interest of time, that's the main thing was I wanted to see this debate between the Mordechai and the Rashba here, right? Of do both Adim need to see the actual giving of the Netina? Here we're talking Kinyan Kesef or potentially Shtar, or is it enough that you can see enough that proves that it was given, like it started in one person's hand, it went to the other person's hand, and so that's going to be a debate on the table between the two of them. Like, what do the Adim actually have to witness? Which could, by the way, make a difference. You can imagine too of calling two Adim up to actually be there and have a really clear view versus two Adim who are like sitting in the audience and they happen to, they saw the ring started with the Chatan, ended up with the Kala. All right, Sarah, go for it.
Yeah, this is just a question which maybe is beyond the scope of what we're talking about. But are there other like areas of halacha where we do say that the like having witnessed enough to know that it happened, but not actually seeing it works?
As I said, I'm not an expert in Chosh and Mishpat, so I have no answer to that. Somebody else might.
Like, is there a good comparison case here? I guess is my question.
I mean, like, Kiddushim is more chamor than a lot of other things, right? So if it works in Kiddushim, you could assume that it works in other places. Because the ramification of like declaring that a Kiddushim is chal is just like pretty massive, right? It's like if she gets married to anyone else, like the kids are going to mamzerim, like she's asur to everyone else. There's a lot to it, right? So if you hold that kind of like view as it relates to Kiddushim, I would assume, and obviously I'm no expert whatsoever, that it also applies to other places.
But we do all kinds of other, like in other areas, we do all kinds of things in like Evan HaEzer related issues where we accept edut that we wouldn't otherwise accept, right? For like, let's say women testifying about certain things.
Yeah, especially for people who remarry, right? Erechad and so forth.
Right. Well, that was, I mean, that was basically
Yeah.
what I mean.
Yeah.
Rev Landis looked like he had something to say.
No, I would. I'm not sure if people were alluding to it, but I was always very impressed in my Choshen Mishpat days that how much in the Shuvas, the great struggle to grant women the status of Eid Echad, which was not considered to be a nothing, was in other words, they're raising the Eid Echad becomes a status, a positive status. So that when a woman testifies, and why in Bate didn't when a woman testify? Because when the hell are you ever going to get two male Adam who see anything together? I mean, it's just, so they were always caught in the thing. So willy-nilly, it just had to happen that they needed women as witnesses. And they say, okay, we have an Eid Echad here. And then, as Nachum mentioned, then you figure out how to be mitzarek something else as possible. I saw that a lot. Who's that Italian, Nachum? Who's the Italian? I can't just think of it right now. Charles Meshiv. It'll come back to me. But anyway, Safer's right over there. I'll have to take a look. But that's what I see. I see it happening over and over. And I think, and then, after a while, consciousness hopefully changes because you need something. Anyway.
No, that's good. That's and it also brings up the whole, the Mara Mipadua, where it's like we don't really need, both Adim to have seen the exact event, right? There are places where you'd want that, as opposed to, want to rely on him and not rely on the Mordechai's, not the the Rashba's opinion. Sorry, there, because there's times you actually want the marriage to have worked, right? And you don't want to have to invalidate the Kiddushin. So.
And this is something we'll also get into a little if we look at like the Maharit and whatever, or at least as they refer to it in like the Bitchma. But like, I think it also is just part of this constant question in the Siman, and obviously when we talk about Edut in general, but specifically here with Kiddushin, as to like, how exactly do we understand the role? Like, to what extent do we understand it as like they are somehow actually integral to like the Hefza of Kiddushin and of like this being an actual significant thing at all, versus about like, say vis-a-vis this being like a publicly known thing, because I think that's important with relationships, that like where we place the emphasis of like who needs to see what and who needs to be where and all of that. Like, I think a big part of it has to do with this idea of, right, like what exact role do we think that they're affecting here?
Yeah, no, I think that's completely true. It's, really, and I really like the way you put it too, of, you could have imagined the whole Edut thing is just like, that's part of the way of saying this has to be a public event and not something that happens privately. And it's like, like we're not so machmir about the Edut. Or is it really like the Edim, where like you need 4 people to affect the marriage at the end of the day, is the other version of that, of the Edim are as integral as the bride and the groom.
Maharik. I couldn't find the same person. Where's that Maharik? Oh, it's the Maharik. Yosef Cologne. Sure. And by the way, I suggest him for anything in terms of Shuvas. It's very helpful in teaching how a base team works.
This is the Shalom Eshiv, Rav Landis?
Yosef Cologne.
Yosef Cologne. Okay. So, but great. With that, we're going to close the tour for the moment. And I'm sorry, we're going to skip all those Batei Yosef. I don't know if that's the right plural. And we're going to go to the Shulchan Aruch, to the Mechaber. So, by the way, as an interesting note, if you have time, not right now, but look, at the Aruch Shulchan, and you'll see this like amazing thing that's happened in Membet, which is especially in the Edut part, is we've gone from the tour is very short, there's a lot of Beit Yosef with individual cases. The Shulchan Aruch we see is lengthier than the tour, and then it's like a huge section there, Aruch HaShulchan, this entire Siman, where he deals with the Edut here, and it's because there's a lot of cases actually where this. Yavni, I was hoping somebody would bring up Padua and Shakespeare, so I appreciate that. That's okay. Tov. With that, Masha, I don't think you or Andres has read, right? Am I correct? So maybe Masha, take bet in the Shulchan Aruch, Mem bet Seif bet.
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, very well.
המקדש שלו בעדים, אפילו בעד אחד אינם קידושים. The one who gets married without any witnesses, and even with only one witnesses, there is no kiddushin. אפילו שניהם מודים בדבר. Even if both of them agree that there have been marriage, has been kiddushin, it's still not chal, I guess, like Ruben would say. ואפילו קידשה בפני עד אחד, ואחר כך קידשה בפני עד אחר. זה שלא בפני זה אינה מקודשת. So even if there were two witnesses that happened at two separate times, so I guess kind of like the Tosefta case, then when they're not literally in the same place at the same time, she is not married.
Exactly, right. That's they did one did in front of one witness in Los Angeles. They flew to New York the next day. They did it in front of the next one. That doesn't count. So okay, good. That's the and notice, by the way, right, I just want to point out the Mechaber has no chashash here for Eid Echad, right? Unlike what we've seen, it was the Smag, I believe, who does, right? He's ignored the Smag's opinion here. All right, however, keep going, Masha.
In the Shulchan Aruch or in the Rama?
In the Rama, in the Shulchan Aruch, yeah.
ויש מחמירים, אם מקדש לפני עד אחד, אם שניהם מודים. And there are those who are more machmir about the question of whether there is kiddush in front of one witness if both of the parties concede that there or agree that there has been kiddushin. אבל אם אחד מכחיש העד, אין לחוש. But if one of them is a contradicting witness, then there is no concern about this. ובמקום עיגון ודוחק, יש לסמוך על דברי המקילים. In the case of, I don't know how to translate עיגון ודוחק.
She's stuck, right? You can imagine, like, we don't know if the guy died. Maybe there's a yibum that's necessary, but the guy's a mumar, or something like that. You can imagine all these kind of cases where that the fact that the marriage effects can get us in trouble.
So in the case of extremis, in her case, then you have to rely on the Kulia opinion. ואין חילוק בין שאומר העד שנתקדשה לפניו לבד, או שאומר שנתקדשה לפני שניים, והוא לבד ראה. And there is no difference between the one witness that says that the one witness that she says that they got married before him alone, or that they got married between two, but he alone is able to, I guess, give witnessing.
Well, he's the only one who saw. And actually, read the next was it forwards? Yeah.
And the other witnesses say that they did not see it, even though there were many of them there. וכן אם קידש לפני שניים, והאחד מהם קרוב, הווה כמקדש לפני עד אחד. And if he did kiddushin in front of two, but one of them is disqualified because of the relationship, this is like the one who only gets married in front of one witness.
Exactly. So, okay, good. I mean, this is, mainly what we've seen, I think, so far. I don't think there's anything too surprising, except I thought the Ramah there, where he has a worry about the Smug's opinion that if it's Eid Echad and the two of them agree, that it counts as a valid marriage. But we actually push that aside for the Mechaber's opinion in a case where that actually gets us into trouble halachically.
And also he paskins like the Rashba, not like the Maharam Padua.
Good. Yes. Yeah. In that
And
they
also the last line is very interesting.
both, good. Yeah.
That if one of them is karov, the other one is still there.
Yeah.
Have mekadesh. I mean, I don't know what he means by that, because mekadesh lifnei eid echad is nothing. So does he mean?
No, it's not. It's not nothing. It's something if the two of them agree, right? Then we have a chashash for kiddushin.
Right. So it's weird, sort of, that he's saying if one of them is a karov, we don't say the whole kat is pasul.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's how the Chalkat Mechokek starts out. If you look at Vav, right? Ve'achad mehem karov, right? He says, V'lo nifsal sheni b'sirufo lekarov, right? Demarid shalom nitzaref. Now he's got to explain it. Shalo nitzaref b'shat re'iyah, right? Ladat harosh. I don't want to get into the whole thing just right now, but I think, yeah, you could imagine that if one's a karov and one's not, and the two of them agree, that there's a chashash for kiddushin, according to the Ramah.
So if you want to be sure that it's not a valid wedding, make sure that both witnesses are krovim.
Exactly. Just yeah, and it's actually a very surprising piece there that he has.
I mean, the karov part kind of makes sense.
The Chalkat Mechokek is saying is making ukipta, is saying that it's not always true.
Exactly. That's which I think he has to, because I think he's surprised by it too, right? That's so sorry, somebody else said something too, and I cut them off.
Oh no, I think the last piece makes sense, because like it was never part of the cat in the first place.
That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is, right, if you called them up as witnesses and one of them's a karov, that's posel the entire
No,
edut,
but
right?
it didn't have the potential to be ed in the first place. So like it never acquired the statute of ed. So therefore it can never like posel the other one.
No, we have a concept in general that when you have two witnesses and one of them is pasul and they come together as a
it's
group,
different. There's a pasul, but there's a karov, right? A pasul, unless you prove that it's pasul, it's kind of a valid ed. But a karov,
karov is one form of pasul. I don't see the distinction.
So
I don't know. The way I saw it is that he never entered the equation in the first place.
No, but Ruben, I think that the whole Mishnah in Makot, right, Aleph Chet that we saw at the very beginning, which was the worry that if two brothers witness something, right, like a murder, then the whole thing would be off. It means that a karov is in the same status as pasul le'edut, I think. So
I don't know, but they're both kosher, so okay, it's kind of a different case, right?
They really
cancel each other. They cancel each other out in that case.
So it's I think though you bring up what I think is an interesting idea, at least, is, and I said I'm not an expert in edut here, but there is the difference between a karov and a pasul is someone who's like a gambler, let's say, right? A gambler is universally asur, to pasul edut. I guess they can do tshuva and all that, but versus a karov is only for particular cases, so they are a little bit different. But I think here karov stands in for karov or pasul, is my guess. So. Okay, great. Let's move on to Gimel in the Shulchan Aruch. And Andres, I've left you in the without reading. I really apologize. So you take Gimel for us, please.
צריך שיראו המקדש והמקדשת את העדים, אבל אם ראו אותם שניים מהחלון והם רואים ואינם נראים לעולה, אינה צריכה ממנו גט. So if the couple needs to see the edim, and if they are looking at them from the chalon and from the window, and they are like looking back, but they cannot distinguish if it's a he or a she.
No, I think they're not, to one of them, they're not seen, right? In other words, right, they're looking from the window.
Okay.
Yeah, right. And they see, but they're not, one of the two parties of the Chatan or Kala doesn't see them. Right.
Okay. Then there are no kiddush because she doesn't need a get.
She doesn't need a get. Yeah. The whole thing being here is that and I'll just, some background that I didn't give us any sources on at the moment, but is there's not only do they both have to know the witness are there. There's an assumption that we have throughout this whole thing is that the average Chatan and Kala know that kiddushin only takes effect if there are two edim, and therefore if they can't see two edim, then they assume it's not real. So then they're playing around. It's not a real thing.
So it's not an essential requirement. It's just because we're trying to understand the kavanah, So therefore, for example, I'll ask a silly question: if one of them is blind, if the chatan or the kala is blind, then it's not a problem because their kavana is not the same in that case. But they don't see it. They assume they don't see because they're blind, not because they're not there.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, right? That this isn't about that you need two edim that are seen by them for the kiyum of the kiddushin. It's just it's so that we know we can be guaranteed that they were in the mindset of that this was a real act and not just they were joking around or something like that. So great. I keep going with the Ramah.
ואפילו שמעו העדים שאמרה שמקבלת לקדושין, יכולה לומר, יודעת הייתי שאין קידושין בלי עדים, וכוונתי לשתוק.
לשחוק.
לשחוק פה. So even if they heard the edim that she said that she was going to be taken as in Kiddushin, she can say that she even if she didn't see the edim, she knew.
Well, she could say, I didn't know that there were, right. She said, I know that there's no Kiddushin with that edim, and I didn't see the edim, so I was just playing around.
Playing around, yeah. Okay. ודווקא שאומרת שכוונה, שכוונה לשחוק בעלמא, אבל אם מחשת שקיבלה כלום, והעדים מעידים שקיבלה, שוב אינו נאמנת לומר לשחוק כוונתי, בהווי קידושין. Okay, so here is more serious. And then what is mechacheshet?
Completely contradicts or denies. Yeah,
if she denies that she received anything, but the edim said that she indeed received something, then we don't believe anything what she says, even if she says that she was playing around and she didn't want to do kiddushin in any way. But then there is kiddushin because the edim say so. Okay.
Yeah. There's, by the way, this is right. Lexi read from the Darchei Moshe. This is the Maram Padua, and I just say that I think it's the Chokat Mechokek. He disagrees, if I remember correctly, with this psak, and he says he doesn't paskin like this. That if she denies the whole thing, she denies the whole thing, and that's still it's good denial because she didn't know they're aiding there, okay, great. Just want to take a quick look. No, yeah, let's keep going in the Shulchan Aruch for the moment. I'm just so let's go. Were there questions on that Seif, by the way?
Sorry, I'm just a bit confused. Like,
yeah,
the Kiddushin is not chal if they haven't seen the edim. So why does she need to justify herself?
Well, remember, this is the whole thing that Rav Nachum was saying is that if they don't see the edim, it's not that they're not chal, it's that we assume that her mindset, because they didn't see the edim, their mindset wasn't about kiddushin, right? That's the assumption we make. But if it's according to the Maram Padua, if she denies that the entire event happened, and they're aiding that the event happened, right? If somebody they're aiding for an event, then the event happened. And then if she denies, she's like, well, he never gave me Kinan Kasef, and we're like, we have eating for that, then we assume that she's lying about the whole thing, is the Maram Padua's view of this.
The problem with that is then that they become edim to the Kiddushin, even though it's like the Mishnah undermines itself. Because in the end, we start by saying she needs to know they're edim there, and in the end, if she denies the whole thing and the edim are like, no, you actually did receive the gift, then we make those edim into valid kosher edim, and now she's married to him. Like
so in other words, I think that's the point, right? The edim were there, and it's a question: do they have to know the edim, or do they have to know the edim are there because we need them to have a mindset that this is real, or do we need them to know that the edim are there because otherwise there's no kiddushin at all, right? And in other words, is the knowledge of the edim just help to prove that they were serious about it, or not? And if it's the idea that she's saying the event never happened, and we have edim that the event happened, not that it was kiddushin, but the event happened, and she denies that, then we assume that her claiming that and it wasn't real is not a good, that we essentially assume she's lying for the entire thing.
But then they become edim to the Kiddushin.
And they were aiding to the Kiddushin. They were always aiding to the Kiddushin. It was just a question of what the mindset was of the people. Was the mindset for Kiddushin.
Could have never known that they were there, and she could then deny that she said it. And now, boom, they've become aiding to the Kiddushin.
Yeah, I'm saying what I'm trying to claim is they were always aiding to the Kiddushin. The question was whether or not they were the Chatan and Kala were serious when they were doing it. And if they did, we generally assume if they didn't know the Eidim were there, that they weren't serious. But now that she's saying it never even happened as an event, we assume that when she then says, I wasn't serious, she's lying. So, yeah. So, sorry, does that make sense? Sarah, sorry, go for it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think one other way to think about this is the Eidim are able to testify to the facts of what they saw, but only she is a reliable reporter of what's in her head.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe. And so like the Eidim can't be witness to whether they thought it was serious or not. So we have some sort of legal presumption based on what she knows or what she could have known or could know or didn't know. But like the facts on the ground can be established by the Eidim if they need to be. And then
notice that sorry for interrupting you. Notice that the Shulchan Aruch says Einot tzricha get mimen. Einot tzricha mimenu get. It doesn't say ein on kiddushin. We're only saying that you don't need a get. So what's the circumstance? The circumstance is that she wants now to get a get. She wants to get out of this marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And she's making a tana. And the tana is that she's making a claim. This is all supposed within the Shulchan Aruch, and it's spelled out by the Ramah. And the Ramah, in other words, he says, the Ramah says, Yechola lomar yadat hayiti she'ein kiddushin below edim. Kavanati l'schok. In other words, all that's also assumed in the Mechaber. We're just saying, he's not saying that it's not a valid whereas if she wants to get out of this marriage, she has a very simple ta'ana. She can just say it was all a joke, and I didn't see any witness. I didn't see any witnesses there. But if she doesn't make that claim, and she says I wasn't joking about anything, it never happened, then she has no claim. What's her claim? She has no claim to get out of this, and we have witnesses that she did it, that she accepted it, and she's not denying. She's not saying she was laughing. She was joking about it. So it's a valid wedding. It's a valid kiddushin.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm throwing in the Ramah into the Mechaber, and I think that's the only way you can read it.
That's and therefore the idea is that it's not. It is a good kiddushin unless she makes a comment that that she didn't really mean it because there were no aiding there and she didn't see them, or vice versa. He could say the same thing, right?
And that's why it says Eino tzricha mimenu get, and it doesn't say Ein kiddushin kiddushin. It doesn't say Ein kiddushav kiddushin.
Yeah. We'll go Sarah, Ruben, and then Alana. Did you have something you wanted to say about it too? So, Sarah, go for it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember whether, like, in other words, if suppose there really were no Eidim there at all, and she says, "I was just kidding," or I guess if suppose there are Eidim, right, and she says, "Oh no, I was confused. I thought we needed 5 Eidim, or I thought like the Eidim were Krovim and they're not, or something." Like she's confused about who the Eidim are, and she's like, no, I thought we were kidding. I'm not sure that does that work too? That seems like too.
No, I don't think she has that power. We saw stuff like that. We saw examples.
Right.
We saw examples of that. She doesn't have the power to do that.
Yeah.
But so then it seems strange that she has the power to do it here. That's
no, because here she has a good claim. That's exactly what we're saying. There are claims that are good and there are claims that are not good. If she's in front of a crowd of 300 people and there's 2 witnesses and there's a ring and everything, and she can't say, I thought it was a joke. But if the witnesses were invisible to her, then she has a good claim.
Sarah,
relies on her knowing a lot of detailed halacha, I think, which is like interesting.
Well, exactly. That's a claim. That's exactly what we're saying. We assume a woman knows a few things, especially about marriage.
Right. That she knows. I mean, yeah, which is just like as a social reality kind of interesting.
As a social reality 1,000 years ago, women knew you needed a pruta. Yeah. They knew you needed 2 witnesses. They knew a few things.
So I know there's a lot of people. I'm going to take everything in a second here, but Sarah, do me a favor, just to help us out a little bit. This may clarify. Can you read the Beit Shmuel Yud Aleph, Sif Katan Yud Aleph, Shuv Einan Ne'emanet? This is the case of the Maram Padua right? Saying that if she said that nothing, there are two Eidim said the event happened, she says, no, it never even happened, that we don't believe her,
Wait, hold
right?
on.
So.
The Beit Shmuel and Yud. Okay, mine is like differently.
Sorry,
Sorry, I'm in the wrong place. Hold on one second.
Okay.
I was on the wrong page for some reason. Okay. שוב אין הנאמנת, בחלקת מחוקק משיג על דין זה ופסולה למרמפדווה. ופוסק לא כמרמפדווה, yeah. All right, so the חלקת מחוקק doesn't agree with this, and Paskin's not like the Maharampadua, ואפילו אם הם מכחישים מהעדים, מכל מקום, כיוון שלא ראו העדים לא הווה קידושין. So, right, even if they contradict what the Eidim said, because they didn't see the Eidim, there's nothing happened.
Exactly.
I see. So he kind of goes this direction.
Yeah, we'll keep going with it. This is
וכתבתה משום אננסהדה דלא קבלה לשם קידושין. And the reason is that we just sort of assume that she didn't accept it לשם קידושין. ובחידושי מהרית כתב אפילו אם היה כוונתם לשם קידושין לא מהנה כמו שכתב בסמוך, right? And then somebody else said, right, okay. And so then the Maharit is going to say that even if they intended to accept it for kiddushin, that still is not effective.
Yeah, right. This is actually, I think a lot of this might be getting to your point of, yeah, like unless they know the witnesses they were there and the witnesses were there and they saw it and so forth, then the kiddushin don't even chal, right? They never even happened. It's not about kavanah, which is what I've been saying up until now, but that it's actually about that's one of the necessary steps to make kiddushin actually happen. So keep going, Sarah.
ואם הקידושין היה לפני עדים פסולים, והם לא ידעו דעדים הם פסולים, והעדים האחרים כשרים ראו גם כמרחוק הקידושין, והם לא ראו את העדים אלו, יש לומר דתליה בשני טעמים הללו. I see. So this is a good case. So they did the kiddushin in front of pasul edim, and the couple knew that those edim were pasul, but then there were also other edim.
They didn't know they were pasul. They thought they were kosher edim.
Right, they thought they were okay. Sorry, yes, they thought they were kosher, but there were other edim who were kosher, who were there, who saw from far away. But the couple didn't see those far away kosher edim. They only saw the close by pasul edim that they thought were kosher. That's the case. Okay. יש לומר דתליה בשני טעמים הללו, לטעם שכתב החלקת מחוקק הווה קידושין, דהכוונתם היה לשם קידושין. So according to חלקת מחוקק, that is kiddushin, because they thought that they were doing kiddushin, and there were edim. They just weren't the edim they thought they were.
Exactly.
כיוון דלא הווה יודעים דהם פסולים. אבל לטעם מהרית, אף בכי הגבנה לא הווה קידושין. But the Maharit is going to say no, because it's not the correct ones.
Exactly, right. And just I'll clarify, and then I'll take everybody who wants to speak. Is right. So in other words, this is a machloket of and I think Ilana, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're getting to this point. You're on the Maharit side here, right? It's not about their kavanah. It's like you need them to know they're aiding there for the kiddushin to work, right? And if you're like the Maram, is the Maram Padua? Is it the Marit? And the Chokat Mechokek is about the kavanah. Right, he doesn't agree with the Maram Padua, is a little bit different, but it's about the kavanah, and so if they had kavanah, as long as there were aiding there, it's fine, and it's about kavanah. So this, by the way, could also be a real case, right? You can imagine in so many weddings where it turns out the aidim were psulim, but there were 150 other people there, and two of them had some kavanah of edut, then that could work,
unless you have specifically nullified all those on the basis that you don't want them to have the das on all those who are hustle or krovic or whatever.
Exactly, and that goes back to the ritva we saw at the beginning, and also if we get to the Pitchei Tshuva that I want to see, which we may not get to, he gets into that too.
But I have to say, there's a case going on right now. This priest, I think it's in Texas, in a small parish. He was a priest there for 20 years. And every baptism he's been doing, he says, we baptize you in the name. But the nusach is, I baptize you. What's the difference? Whereas we baptize you, it's like all you New Age Jews, it's the power of the community and all that. But to say I baptize you, it's how, because the priest is a shliach of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And he makes it happen. So they brought it to the basin of the church, I mean, the bishopric, and they say, yeah, no, it's not baptized. Now, baptism is a sacrament. In other words, they got a big problem because he's been doing it for 20 years. And there's a lot, or over 20, and there's people getting married who haven't been kosherly baptized.
So, wow, that's like it really is.
It's a kosher problem. I mean, but I feel like
it might go to hell.
Why am I saying a power of a ritual then becomes that you don't have to pass them all the time. The power of a ritual is you try to get it right as much as possible, so you don't have that difficulty.
Yeah. So, all right. Who else? I saw some other hands on this too. Ruben.
So just to make sure that I understand correctly, the machloket comes down as to what is the purpose of Eidim, right? So it seems to be that per the Chalkat Mechuvik.
Well, in this case, it's not the purpose of the Eidim, it's the purpose of the Chatan and Kala seeing the Eidim, right?
Right, but what's the role of the Eidim? Are they like necessary to the wedding, or like for the Kiddushim to be Chal? Or they're just like a side actor? Well, right? It seems like from one side, like so long as you have in mind that you have witnesses, like it doesn't matter whether they're kosher or not. Like they're not really like part of the kiddushim, right? It's only chal on the chatan and kala. But the other side is saying like kiddushim are like a central element of kiddushin. Eidim are a central element of kiddushin, and I guess that's where the machloket is at. I mean, that's if I understand correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can go all the way through the spectrum. The Eidim could just be there just to verify the event happened, right? The Eidim could be necessary for the event, or it could even be that. And the Eidim are also there to clarify the mindset, that they, or it could actually be that part of the ritual, one of the steps needed, not only do they need to be Eidim there, and not only do they, need to be kosher Eidim and all that, but the Chatan and Kala have to know they're Eidim there, not about their kavanah, but in order for it to work, they even have to know that they're Eidim. And it's not about mindset at that point. So I think there's a huge range of what the Eidim are actually doing here, potentially, and that's part of what we're playing out. So, but good. I don't know if that, hopefully that helps start to clarify. I have to say, like, the more I learn this, the more I'm not sure like exactly where the Eidim fall in that whole spectrum. And we see it with the machloket of, and Alana's, point comes back too of, what about, did the Eidim themselves even know, that they were doing Eiduts, and do they have to know it, which we haven't even gotten into that. We saw that already in the Ritva, in the mindset of, did the Eidim have to be able to say, I was there to be a witness, or I just happened to see the event? Is that good enough? And how much power that has as well.
Right. And I guess to go further in the spectrum, some people say that like Eidim don't even have to see everything. If they saw part of it, it's like as if they saw everything.
Yeah, this is why, right? I think, when we get down to it, and there's the Pirchei Tshuva, if we don't get to it, which I don't think we will, please do take about the Pirchei Tshuva and Yud Aleph, where he actually talks about, we designate two Eidim to the exclusion of everybody else, because, I think there really is this, it's very easy to mess this up, and we really want to get it right, in general, to actually make the Kiddushin take effect properly.
Sorry, and even if the Eidim are psulim, the fact that we have ksherim that witness the thing happening in front of Eidim, like, makes it okay, right?
Yeah, but we don't want to rely on that. Like, at the end of the day, I don't think anybody ever wants to have to fall back on these cases of, well, maybe there were Eidim in the crowd, and maybe they count, and maybe the fact that there are other ones there who are pasul doesn't make the whole thing pasul. So it's a very careful way that you have to do it if you really want to make sure that you check all the boxes and dot all the I's and cross all the T's, kind of thing. So good. All right, any other thoughts before we go on to Dalet and Hey? Let's see if we can maybe do a little bit of this. Let's see, Yavni, you want to read Dalet? back in the Shulchan Aruch, Sif Dalet.
Well, sure. קידש בפני עדים, אפילו לא אמר אתם עדים מקודשת. So this is saying, yeah, do you want me to translate or just keep it?
No, that's pretty good. It's,
ואפילו ייחד עדים יכולים אחרים שראו המעשה להעיד, וצריכים העדים לראות הנתינה ממש לידה או לרשותה. אבל אם לא ראו הנתינה ממש לידה, אף על פי ששמעו שאמר התקדשי לי בחפץ פלוני, ואחר כך יצא מתחת I have yadam, but is that wrong?
No, I have it should be tachat. I think it should be yado.
Yado, that makes more sense.
Yeah, mine says yada though, so who knows? Yeah, that's
Enan kiddushin.
keep going.
אינן קידושין עד שיראו הנתינה ממש. ואין הולכים בזה אחר אומדנות והוכחות.
Remember, we saw this was a debate between the Rashba and the Mordechai, but he's paskening per the Rashba here. So.
מי שקידש דרך חור שבכותל, כגון שאחת פשטה ידה דרך חור ובא אחד ונתן לה קידושין, והחור צר, ואי אפשר לראות אותה בשעת קידושין, והיא אומרת שלא שמעה שקידשה, נאמנת במיגו, שיכולה לומר שלא הייתה ידה, רק יד אחרת. ובלבד שלא יהיו עדים המכחישים אותה, כל עדות שלא
Just explain that case for one minute, because I think it's probably a good reality TV show in the future, but you know, it's
So Pyramus is standing on one side of the wall and Thisbe is standing on the other, and Thisbe sticks her hand through the hole in the wall, and Pyramus sticks Pruta in her hand, and afterwards, and he says, and she says, oh, I didn't hear him. Then she, I don't know why it's phrased this way, like she says she didn't hear him, but she said, but the Kiddushin are not chal, because she could say that it wasn't her hand at all, because the Edim are on his side, presumably, unless there are Edim who saw the whole thing somehow from above the wall, in which case there are Kiddushin.
Yeah, so that's good. You know, it's a case where this is, and just the case of Migo here, right? That she, you know, since she could have made a stronger claim, you know, that it wasn't her at all. The fact that she's been to be modab b'ktsat of it, you know, means that we do believe her. So,
got it. Thank you.
But okay, keep going with the Ramah here.
כל עדות שלא נחקר בבית דין, לא מקרה עדות לעניין קידושין. כך מרדכי, ולכן אפילו אמרו עדים חוץ לבית דין שנתקדשה, יכולים לחזור בהם בבית דין, לומר לא נתקדשה, וכן ההפך. That's not something really we saw so much already, but yeah.
No, but it's right. The idea is like, you know, whatever Adim say, you know, outside of the Beit Din doesn't count for anything. This is a law in many legal systems, I think, right? That it's like, you know, what you say outside of a court doesn't count. You know, it's when you actually are in court that's important. So.
עדי קידושין אינם צריכים דרישה וסקירה, אם לא בדבר שנראה שיש רמאות. מצאו כתוב בשטר פלוני קידש פלונית, ועדים חתומים בו, כל זמן שאין השטר מקוים, אין לחוש לקידושין. So you need to, like, even if we know that there was a shtar, if the shtar is not currently existing, then there's no kiddushin.
Yeah. So.
ודלא כיש מי שמחמיר בדבר.
Yeah, I'm not going to get too far into that one just because of time at the moment, but there's a whole thing too about, you know, if you find a random shtar that's signed, like what do you believe about it and so forth. But so okay, one more Siman, and then I'll take a few last comments and questions. So I do want to, I'll do hey, I haven't read, so people don't. It's long. Let me think. I'll do a little bit of it. So hey, Hav Mekadesh Psule Edut, Deoraita, where we saw this in the Torah, Einan Kiddushin, Aval p'sulei edut derabanan ove edim shem safek p'sulei Torah. Im rotzeh lichnos chozer mekadesh be'edim ksherim ve'im lo ratzah lichnos tzricha get misafek. Right. So this is right. The idea if the edim are derabanan pasul or it's safek deraita, then we either go back and it's a safek. So therefore we either go back and do kiddushin properly, or we give a get. Right. Ve'afilu kafra isha v'meret lo kiddushtani. Kofino ta oto liten get, right? Even if the woman says, no, it never happens, she denies this case, we still say it's a safek and she needs to get. V'chein din kol kiddushay safek, im ratzah lichnos choder mekadesh vadai, v'im lo ratzah lichnos tzricha get v'imeno misafek, right? And if not, then we get a get from the doubt. V'im amad acher v'kidsha, harezo mekudeshet l'sheni misafek u'tzricha get mishnehem, o megaresh rishon v'noseh sheni, right? So, and if in the meantime somebody else comes and marries her, now they're both in safek, right? We've seen this before, and therefore she either needs a get from both, or it's possible, right? Since she can't go back to the first guy now because it's safek that she had, another husband in between, she can get a get from the first guy and marry the second guy properly. So, all right, it's just interesting, and this is really kind of based on the Rambam because it's under this case that the Rambam explains in the Mishnah Torah where. What happens in all these cases of sfekot. And so I think that it's kind of made its way back down through the literature that's how it ended up in Siman Membet, as opposed to other places. So, all right. I'm going to skip the Ramah for the moment just because we're out of time. It's worth reading. Maybe we'll actually do it if you come to Chazara. I just want to open it for any last thoughts, or maybe if not, I'll close it out with something. So I mean, maybe I'll just close it, but just by saying, I think one of the things that's really strikes me, which I've said, but is that the edut of kiddushin seems to not here only be about, and the Beit HaLevi has a whole thing about this, right? That it's not just that the edim are there to testify in case somebody contradicts what happened or denies what happened and so forth. That the edim from kiddushin are really a necessary component of actually doing the kiddushin. And so really the question now becomes, what parts are they necessary for? Are they necessary for the whole thing, or necessary that the Chatan and Kala see them? Are they also there to kind of give us testimony about the mindset? And that's all the questions that are kind of circling around here that make this a confusing really issue. And beyond that, which we also had, is there's a whole question of if one aid is not a kosher aid, then does that posel the entire edut? And what about the random people sitting in the audience who are not kosher adim for whatever reason? And how do they kind of interact with all that? So
we saw actually in the we saw actually in the Ramah, I wanted to emphasize that the Ramah says that the other people do count.
Exactly.
If you find a psul in the two witnesses, then the other people count.
Mm-hmm.
The other people that saw. So we see that actually, Paskin. Anyway, Shekoyach is a big topic, and you circumnavigated it pretty well.
Yes, somewhat. I got through it.
I want to say two things.
Yeah.
You only end up, based on what you said, you only end up counting. You have the das and the edim who are not possible. In other words, that would be the implication. And if you don't say that to the exclusion of everyone else, we say that means to the inclusion of anybody who's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
That would have to be. That's one. Second thing I would say is, I'm going to advise those bishops that could solve the problem very easily. That when this fellow was saying we, and by the way, it turns out I just looked it up. Then many other priests are saying that they also use the nusach we. So it's like a major catastrophe. But by we, you say the kavanah was a royal we. Meant an I. And stop it there and say there's no problem, but don't do it anymore. So I'll write that in and see what the response will be. But I won't say it to anybody else's name.
All right. Thank you, everybody. What's Siman are we
sorry,
doing?
guys. One last question. So what do we do with tachlis? Let's say, one of us called to do a wedding one of these days. what's the formulation? Do we say to the exclusion of everyone else? Do we include, exclude? Like, do we check into the Edom?
So the way I always learned it was that first, maybe Rav Lennis or Rav Nachum could say better things, but since I guess I'm teaching, so I'll just say quickly. I always learned that first off, you ask the Edim, like, is there any relationship you have to these people? I also have a thing about, I ask around about the Edim and, are they Shomrei Shabbat and stuff like that. I don't go too deep, but that's what I've done. And then the other thing is I've always said, these are the Edim to the exclusion of everybody else is the way I've learned to do it. But
to the exclusion of everyone else was not chal for decades and decades and decades in America. And it wasn't chal because even with asking all those questions, we were worried about a problem with one or both of the Edom or with the Edis, and it didn't exist. And I only saw it really starting to become popular about 30 years ago. It was always a brisker thing. It was always considered a brisker chumrah, but now it's become quite powerful. Maybe people like excluding other people, but whatever. But it only has become popular. And I think it's a good place for debate about where it should be.
So, yeah, it's I will. Oh, sorry, Rav Nachum, you want to say something?
Go ahead.
Well, is the one other thing I didn't bring in here, but I had to look up once for a wedding. It didn't end up happening, but there is a whole discussion about if the Mesader Kiddushin, if that person is paid, whether or not they can be an aid or not, because they're being paid to be Mesader Kiddushin, but are they assuming that they're not? But you had actual communities where there were not, a lot of kosher Eidim, and the Mesader Kiddushin would often become the aid, one of the Eidim for the marriage. So there are actually cases where that ends up happening as well. So,
yeah, sure. There's actually an interesting thing about being paid. There's a whole tshuva about that. There's a halacha requirement to pay him, but there's the modern tshuvas that say that's not true nowadays, where the Rav is paid by the city. That was only true when the Rav was financed by the weddings. But just to repeat the Ramah, afilu yiched edim yechol acherim shera'u amase la'id. Even if he's miyached, he says these are the witnesses. I don't know if you have to say to the exclusion of all else. I think it's implied. If you say these are the witnesses, then that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's mashma.
Yeah. The next siman we're going to do is Nun Hey. I'll send out some sources. We're not going to do all of Nun Hey. We're really just going to do the very beginning of it, and focusing on something which we'll get to also in later simanim, which is what is the definition of chuppah. That's the main topic. There's like 7 different opinions about what a chuppah is, and we'll see. I tried to gather some of the sources for those opinions. So that's just the beginning of Nun Hey. After that, we're going to go on to 61 Samach Aleph. So we're going into hyperdrive here, or whatever you want to call
it. Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Laila Tov.
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.